So I'm starting to see that the term Kessler Kessler syndrome is a bad. It's bad. You can't say that. You can't talk about the Kessler syndrome. I just noticed that the avoidance of the subject. You have Elon Musk talking about this giant new space station in low Earth orbit that he wants to construct, and I'm thinking, we have millions. See, they can only track objects that are like the size of a softball. That's about as small as it gets. Okay, but something that's the size of a hardball, and you have collisions that are happening between objects that can have 50,000 mile per hour impacts. Um, you know what? It was Cosmos. What was the other satellite? There's been two unintended collisions. I can't remember who it was. Cosmos. There were Jesus. They were tracking the satellites and they knew they were going to pass within 1,600 yards of each other. Now you think about that. 1,600 yards. Okay? Come on, that's 16 football fields radius. And these two satellites collided. What are the odds? Okay? But now the problem is that those are, every one of those pieces is still in orbit. And they start to, because there is a minute amount of drag in low Earth orbit. Some of these objects are trailing behind and some are further ahead. So you get kind of a line. Also, energies are imparted that are negative and positive to particles of this collision, that some will actually achieve a little bit higher orbit and some will achieve a little bit lower orbit. So now, not only do you have an elongated trail of debris, but it's spreading out like this. So you have two shotgun rounds that are orbiting the Earth right now, and then we had two more collide. So that's four. You have four of these blasts, these debris clouds. Think of it as a cloud, a long, very long, wide cloud, and it's flying through the sky at 20,000 miles an hour, and we have four of those for sure. Now, all the objects we know there's been collisions, and those turn into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller particles. I used to do the videos about the end result of the Kessler syndrome is that the Earth turns into an ice ball. Because it's an exponential increase in collisions as these objects start to, turn into lots of other projectiles, until sooner or later, after a period of 100 or so or 200 years, you're going to grind these pieces into tiny little particles, and they're going to be reflecting sunlight. A lot. Enough to freeze the planet. It's one of the tragedies of modern warfare is that what's the first thing we're going to attack? We're going to take out their communication satellites, their navigation satellites. They're the satellites they use to aim their weapons and fly their drones. The satellites are prime number one A1 target, which is why we have all these secret programs going where there's weapons in space, weapons that are either shoot projectiles or go up and detonate against an enemy's satellite. That's been going on for a long time. So you can guarantee that there's lots of weapons in space waiting to take out the enemy's, critical infrastructure in space. And they're going to attempt to do it to ours. It's over. You see, it doesn't matter who wins the fucking war at that point. This is something that's not talked about. It's not discussed. No one wants to hear about it. No one wants to talk about it. You see, but it's a simple matter of physics. This is not, it's not something that might happen. Okay? No. If we take out 100 of their satellites and they take out 100 of ours, then that's it. There's going to be enough debris flying around where it's going to start the Kessler syndrome really accelerating. When they did the calculation, when he did the calculation, the answer from the supercomputer was 1. In other words, it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time when it would happen if we continued on the trajectory we're doing. Well, since then, we have lost 10,000 objects into space with no regard of deorbiting these devices when their usefulness was done. Or boosters, okay? I have my tracking app on my iPad where I can look at all of the boosters, right, with my virtual camera, and my room is just covered in old booster bodies the size of school buses. When those start colliding into one another and making, thousands of objects that are traveling, Mach 9, Mach 10 at the slowest. Aluminum melts at Mach 3. And so we're talking about objects that are going Mach 10. Something as big as a BB is going to, take out an Abrams tank. You know what I mean? You can't underestimate the energies that are in these objects, the speed they're going. Delta V 17.5, right? Yeah, it scares me because I know that's what's going to happen. You have no military mind if you don't understand that that's the first thing that's going to happen. They're going to absolutely go after that asset first thing. So when I hear this talk about putting large objects in low Earth orbit, I'm thinking, how many times have they've had to move the space station and have them go down and get into the damn Soyuz in case something hit because it was too late. The pizza box had already been intruded on by this object, and they had to go and seek refuge just in case. A few, and so the larger your space station and the more populated in there, the more danger there is. There's an inflatable habitat that I watched their burst test. Wow. Sierra Technologies, I think. I watched their burst test. It was crazy. Very crazy. But that might be a solution because it's softer and it could basically catch objects rather than a rigid frame that is going to take, point of impact type dynamics. The big inflatable space stations might be able to take impacts a little bit better. So there's a possibility that it's a possible, but I just don't see it as safe. When Elon Musk first started talking about putting satellites in orbit for a communication system, there was no talk about deorbiting until everybody got upset. And then all of a sudden, okay, yeah, well, they all have a deorbiting device. You see, now we understand how we fucked up. We understand how we polluted, just like we did the oceans and everything else. We've polluted space. And it's full of trash and garbage, like some beaches, pristine beach in Bali, covered in floating fucking plastic and garbage. Such a tragedy. We've done the same thing in space. So, I don't know. What I do know is that there will be satellite on satellite warfare, and as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Even if we decided, okay, look, this is out of hand, we need to stop before we destroy the world, it'll be too late because they would have already destroyed 20 or 30 satellites. And that's enough where the Kessler syndrome is going to happen probably, in your lifetime for sure. So I guess we'll find out, won't we?